Welcome to another week of the group chat. We are finishing up the book of 2 Kings and finishing up the Crumble Cycle series. Our big idea is remembering God for what he's done and for what he is doing brings the blessing, but forgetting God brings the crumble. We do not want to be people that are like Manasseh, which means he forgets. We do not want to forget God. And recapping the message, we see how Josiah led the nation of Judah from revival to being in the wrong battle. He inserted himself somewhere where he was never meant to insert himself, which reminds me of just something that you may want to discuss with some friends or family this week. When has there ever been a time where you've inserted yourself into a problem that you had no business getting involved in? I know one of the patterns we see in our world today is this thing called helicopter parenting, where parents get maybe a little more involved in their kids' lives than they should. Kids are supposed to be growing up to become adults, but sometimes parents will end up calling the bosses of their kids. I mean, like after they get out of college, and will call their bosses and try to take care of them, or maybe they'll get hyper involved in their sports more than they should instead of giving space for them to become their own person. And parents sometimes get maybe too caught up and involved in their kids' own relationships. We should be coaching, we should be involved in it, but we could sometimes get a little too involved. And so sometimes as parents, we can insert ourselves in problems that we shouldn't be inserting ourselves into. And what happens here is Josiah inserts himself into an issue, and because of it, it's going to have a chain reaction. He's going to end up dying in battle from Egypt, and now Judah doesn't have a godly king anymore. So just one decision caused a chain reaction. And then the next king and the next king and the next king are going to be ungodly. And we're going to see how Judah ultimately is going to crumble. They're going to be partially taken over by Egypt, but then completely taken over by Babylon. What we see is this crumble cycle coming to full fruition. And the reason that the crumble cycle comes to full fruition is because God said it would. And the reason that this happens is that the people had forsaken God. They had forgotten God. Just as that name Manasseh means he forgets, the people of Judah had forgotten God. And God had said that one day, because they were forsaking him, he would forsake them. And because Josiah dies young, and because the kings that follow him do not repent, God's promise does come true. And so now Babylon is going to come and take over. But even though Babylon comes and takes over, that doesn't mean God has forgotten his people. But we see 3 different deportations happen from Judah to Babylon as Babylon is taking over. In 605, Daniel, that generation, and his friends are going to be taken, just as Isaiah had told Hezekiah that there would be a new group of people and they would become eunuchs and they would serve at the palace. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would be a part of that. So in 605 BC was the first deportation out of Judah into Babylon. 597 was the second deportation. Many believe that the prophet Ezekiel was taken during this time. And then in 586, all the poop hits the fan, right? Like Babylon completely takes over. The walls are breached. The temple's destroyed. The leaders are exiled. Zedekiah, the last king, watches his sons get killed, and then he is blinded. So the very last thing that he remembers is his sons getting killed, and then he is taken away. And Jewish sovereignty ends at this point in time in 586. The next time Jewish sovereignty would come back would be in 1948. Even in the midst of all the darkness, God is still at work. He still loves his children, and he still will listen to them. And we see a story of mercy at the very end of this, which I think is absolutely fascinating. And I believe God's trying to teach us something with the end of 2 Kings. After destruction, Babylon appoints Gedaliah, who is a good governor, and he urges the people, don't fight this discipline that's happening to us. Serve Babylon, don't make it worse. And the people still kill Gedaliah, even though he's a good guy. 37 years later, Jehoiachin, who was already taken captive by Babylon, gets released from prison. So a former king of Judah, Jehoiachin, gets released from prison by a guy named Evil Merodach. Now, that sounds like a great villain name, but this king of Babylon is actually going to be an okay guy. And we know this because he shows some kindness to Jehoiachin. He gives him a seat of honor, and he gives daily provision at the king's table. So 2 Kings doesn't end in complete despair, but with a picture of mercy to someone who doesn't deserve it. When I think about mercy, who doesn't deserve it, I think about myself. I think we should think about all of ourselves. So this king welcomes Jehoiachin was an evil king. He welcomes an evil king to come and have the benefits of royalty. And that's what God does for us when we turn to him and when we repent. So we weren't living in real time back then, but we see a full reflection of what happens. We get a nice 30,000 foot flyover, and we see how God was giving a story of grace, even as an entire kingdom was crumbling. What's our job in all of this? Well, simply put, it is to remember God for what he's done and for what he's doing. And if we do, we'll be blessed. But if we forget God, there will be a crumble and a curse. Hope you guys enjoy your time of discussion. We'll do this again soon.